Okay, good morning, everybody. Nice to see you. We'll start with our blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Happy Thursday. Happy almost end of the month of Av. This Shabbos, we will be doing the blessing for the upcoming month of Elul, which begins on Sunday night. So we're doing the blessing, announcing the coming on Shabbos, and then it starts Sunday night. Because the month of Av is a 30-day month, the 30th day of Av is called Rosh Chodesh Elul, even though it's not Elul yet. And Elul will start, actually, the first day of Elul will be on Monday. So it's a 2-day Rosh Chodesh, and we go into the month of Elul. Today, just so you know, tomorrow, not today, tomorrow is Chaf Chet Av. Chaf Chet spells the word koach. It spells the word strength. So the strength of every month is considered an auspicious day. It happens in my family that we have 3 birthdays and an anniversary that are on Chaf Chet Av. So it's the koach of the month. It's the strength of the month. People often will arrange, if they have flexibility, will arrange wedding dates specifically to be on Chaf Chet, to be on the strength of the month, or Rosh Chodesh is another auspicious time. Different days are auspicious, and anytime you're getting married, as long as to the right person in the right place in the right way, is a good thing. But that being said, there are also like these other segulas. So Chaf Chet is a good and auspicious time. So hopefully tomorrow will be a good and auspicious time, the end of the month of Av, launching us into the month of Elul. And I wanted to talk about that in conjunction with the Parsha of Re'eh, with insights that I heard from a class with Rabbi Shmuel Halpern the other night that was very, I'll say, mind-blowing, interesting and inspiring, challenging to understand. And the bottom line will be is we don't have to understand it. We just have to know that there's something not understandable out there, which is kind of good. So that's, excuse me, that's what we're going to talk about today. In the Parsha of Parsha Re'eh, which is chapter 11, verse 26 of Devarim, of Deuteronomy, or page 999 in the Chumash, starts out with the word see, which is why the Parsha is called Re'eh, from lir'ot, which means to see. Re'eh, I present before you today a blessing and a curse. The blessing that you hearken to the commandments of Hashem, your God, that I command you today, and the curse if you do not hearken to the commandments of Hashem, your God, and you stray from the path that I command you today to follow gods of others that you did not know. So basically we have, this is in our list of things that God puts before us. We have blessing and curse, life and death, good and evil, all of these things. We have these very extreme places. You notice there's no parv place. There's no place of, well, it's okay. There's no place like that. It's either, because all of these things represent trajectories. It's a trajectory of blessing or curse, life or death, good or evil. And when we realize that those are the options, it clarifies positions for us. On one hand, because we know that there's not like this muddled middle ground. There really isn't. This doesn't mean that everything is black and white. We're talking about making decisions that there will always be a decision that is more good rather than more bad, and that we need to make those decisions. Doesn't mean that they're not complicated. It's simple, but it's not easy. And that is the challenge. That's why in Jewish law, there's always the question of what's the right thing to do. In ethical situations, we always have, for example, the needs of the individual versus the needs of the many. We have, something that is, but of people versus possessions. We have like all sorts of things that we have, paradoxes that we have to are challenged by. When we had the ethics class in the Milton curriculum, that's what ethics is about. It's about making tough decisions where you have competing interests. So it's not easy. So we're going to talk about it in a little bit more of a basic way, and we're going to do it in the context of the month of Elul. So let's just back up. We know that we're getting ready for Rosh Hashanah. The month of Elul begins the 40 days that Moshe went back up to Mount Sinai and to get the second tablets and to come down on Yom Kippur. So 40 days after Rosh Chodesh Elul will be the 10th of Tishrei. We'll have the month of Elul, then we'll have Rosh Hashanah, on the 1st of Tishrei. The 10th of Tishrei is the 40th day from Rosh Chodesh Elul. And this is the time when Moshe will come back down with the second set of tablets, which really tells us that Yom Kippur is really the second Shavuot. It's the second giving of the Torah, which gets a little bit muddled in our observance of Yom Kippur. We tend to not really think about it so much because there's so many other things going on, but that's also what's going on. So we have this, excuse me, very multifaceted holiday calendar cycle schedule that's all going on at the same time. But basically, they're all taking us in the same direction. It's not like we have, we have to do this, now we have to do that, and we have to have this in mind and that in mind. Really, there's only one thing in mind, which is our basic orientation to our life. So it's a big question, but it is really the only question is, what is the basic orientation of my life? Am I going in the way of blessing or curse, good or evil? These right or wrong, what is my direction? So we're going to talk about the concept of what's called Teshuva. When you've heard the word Teshuva before, I'm assuming that you usually hear it in the context of meaning repentance. It's a very Christian term. It's not really the term we use. The word Teshuva means to return. So it still has an idea of like, return you sinners, okay? So return you wayward children, we still have that kind of idea, but we're gonna be talking about the concept of returning in a much bigger way that really addresses the idea of the teshuva as we normally think of it, of returning from mistakes and repentance, etc., because there is that piece in it. But what we're excuse me, going to be talking about is on a much broader, bigger picture. So let's talk about creation. Let's talk about creation. We have a paradox in creation from the get-go. When God, we know there is nothing but God. The Torah says, Ein od milvado. There is nothing other than God. Now, right away, we have a problem. I happen to be looking at a screen and I see a number of individual people here. And we're not God. Some people think they're God, but they're not. Okay, so we're not God. So we have a challenge in that God created the world and God created us. We know that we come from God. Our neshamas are directly, it says, from underneath the kisei hakavod, from underneath the throne of glory. That's where our neshamas come from. Our bodies are made out of earthly things, all of the elements of the physical world, and then this is put together. So we're going to address that as well. But let's just talk about creation to begin with. When God created us, God created an existential problem, which is that we exist and need to exist as an independent entity. We need to have free choice. We need to have free will. We need to be unique, to be individuals, to individuate. We need to have a separate existence. There's only one problem with that. Anytime there's a separation, there creates a distance. So if the infinite creator of the universe creates a human being who needs to have not just an illusion of separateness, but a real reality of separateness, this is going to create a problem. What's the problem? What's the problem with a person being separated and individuated and distinct from the creator? Any have thoughts, Etta?
Well, we lose our focus if we are not connected. We're kind of like have to figure it all out from scratch. I mean,
yes, we have to figure it all out from scratch. Like, Now what? Okay, so it's it's like I don't know, like an astronaut away from the mothership, but doesn't know that it has a cord that attaches it to the mothership. It's like, I'm just floating out here in space. It's like, well, not really, but you have to have that illusion, otherwise you can't be a person. So God created human beings, and in the creation creates the potential for a relationship with God, but also the potential for a not relationship. Because the person who thinks that they are their own separate thing, and I can do whatever I want, however I want, whenever I want, wherever I want, is going to end up in a bad place. The person who thinks that they aren't an independent entity at all is going to be floating on a beach in Tahiti and doing nothing, because I'm just part of God. There's nothing but God, so I don't have anything to do. So do we see how this introduces an existential problem for us as human beings? We are connected to God because there is nothing other than God, and yet we have a reality that we live in, and we're going to call this the human dimension. The dimension that we live in is the dimension of free will, free choice, and independent individual existence. This also creates two other challenges. One is I become what's called existentially lonely. I become lonely because I don't think there's anything out there. Now you can say, well, there's all these other people out here, but we know that just because there are a lot of people around doesn't mean that somebody doesn't feel lonely. If I feel disconnected from my source, I don't think there is a source, I become existentially lonely. It also makes me nervous and fearful, because if I'm all alone and it's really all about me, then I need to protect my existence. That means I need to be extremely competitive. I need to make sure that I have the resources that I need for my life. And then it's going to be a survival of the fittest approach. Now, all of these things are disastrous for a human being. And yet, at some level, they become a necessary starting point. They become a necessary starting point. I'm going to use the metaphor of a child. A child, when it's born, I mean, we don't know exactly what a child thinks, but a child thinks that it is part of its mother. Okay, we are one. It's a big wake-up call, and that's why it scares them when they get to the place when whatever switch goes on in the developmental phase, when mommy leaves the room and the baby starts crying, because the child thinks the mommy no longer exists. So the child is freaking out. Where's mommy? So, but the child, you can say, well, wouldn't that just be nice? I'll just stay attached to my child, and then they'll know that I'm always here, and then they don't have to go through that pain. And yet that is suffocating. That's, what do we call that? That's like the helicopter parent. I will be with you at every moment, so you don't ever think that I'm not here. It's like, I can't grow in that environment. I will carry you everywhere you need to go, or I'll drive you. I'll do your work for you. And I don't want you to have a worry for a moment. Be like, you have just crushed this child. And we do that kind of anyway, because that's how we are. But if God did that, and God's reality and connection to us was so overwhelmingly present, we could not have an existence. We would be absorbed and subsumed into God's reality. God is very creative, trusting being for having created human beings as an experiment. I almost say an experiment, as an intention of like, because you can only have a relationship with someone who is an individual, independent being. You cannot have a relationship with somebody who does not see themselves as separate from you. It doesn't work. It doesn't work in any kind of relationship. So we also notice that in human development, that a child goes through several phases where they are wired to try to separate from their parents. When they become 2 or earlier, no, you tell me yes, I say no, we're going left, no, I'm going right. And then we get adolescence, and then we get all these things which are or the famous saying of a child, you're not in charge of me. You're not in charge of me. Okay, we all say that at some level a lot. You're not in charge of me. Okay, so this is the challenge. Like, that's true. I'm not in charge of you because you need to make your own decisions, but I want to help you make the decisions you need to make so that you can thrive. So it is a very, very delicate balancing act between finding a place of connection and recognizing the separation. Separation also introduces the idea for human beings vis-a-vis God of making mistakes. And we're going to call them sins, but we're going to call them making mistakes because the major word for sin in Hebrew is a chet. A chet is missing the mark. It's an archery term. I aimed and I missed. Okay. It can be even intentionally. I decided I was going to hit him instead of the bullseye. No, actually, I'm going to take them out. So the ability to make mistakes is only because of our distance from God. If we were so aware of God's reality every moment, you couldn't make a mistake. It'd be like if you're walking next to a police officer or you're a student in the school and you're walking next to the principal. You're not going to do those things because you are under the watchful eye. You are in a way being coerced. If I can't really make a free will decision because your presence is so overwhelmingly there, then it's not really a free choice. I remember when our daughter was little, she was around 2. We were living in an apartment, maybe she was younger. And we had, the old fashioned bookcase. We had all our 33 records on the bottom shelf before our child was born. We kept them on the bottom shelf. And then afterwards, we didn't know like how long it was going to be before she would pull these out. And we said, no, you can't touch the records. No, you can't touch the records. And I remember walking in to the dining room one day, or the living room area. And Audrey didn't see me, but she's standing in front of the bookcase going, no, don't touch. No, don't touch. And I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. She's integrating the rules, but she's making a choice, but I'm not there. She doesn't see that I'm there, but I am there in her mind because she's heard me say this. And now she has to make the choice. Is she going to touch it or is she not going to touch it? So God has to hide God's self in order for us to exist. Because if the presence was so overwhelming, we could not function. So this is built into the system, this distancing. It is necessary in order for us to grow as people. But then there's the mechanism called Teshuva. So Teshuva means to return, but it's not just return from your wayward ways. It's return to a sense of your realization of what the truer reality is. It's entering into God's dimension, and in God's dimension, me and my mistakes and my life are all connected to God, and the distance that I thought existed does not exist. And in fact, my mistakes become a vehicle for my being able to regain this awareness of my connection to God. So let's go back to the idea of when someone feels lonely. Why do we send, whether it's a good strategy or not, why do we put a child in timeout if they've made a mistake? Why do we do that? Besides just wanting to have a few moments to breathe or something, what is it that we're trying to stimulate? We're trying to, if it's not being done for punitive reasons, we're trying to create an emotional state. What state are we trying to create? I'll say, especially let's like fighting with siblings. Why do we say you're going to time out? What does that do? Etta?
Well, just a little bit of meditation time.
Okay, about what?
About what he's feeling, what he's thinking, how to get back to his life, her life.
Okay, how to get back. Because what we're trying to do is actually create a state of loneliness, is because humans are social beings. They said, talk about, like that now timeout doesn't work because his kids have their phone and their computers and their iPads or whatever. They're not lonely. It's like, fine, put me in my room. I can stay in my room forever. No problem. But cut them off from their friends or cut them off from something, that's going to be a problem. So all timeouts are like, if you can't participate in the society, whether it's the family or whatever, then you have to leave. And it's designed, it's supposed to not only to keep people safe, that's another element of it. It's supposed to stimulate, I want to be back. So that the mistake is designed as like, oh, I actually like my brother. I actually like my sister. Okay, I'll get along with them, whatever it might be. That the idea of returning where then the mistake becomes a vehicle for recognizing, oh, I'm connected to them. I don't want to do this. In this realm, the mistake then becomes, I won't say it's a mitzvah necessarily, but it's becoming a positive thing in that it sends the person back close to close the gap of the distance that was created by their wrongdoing. It wasn't the wrongdoing that created the distance. It was the distance that created the wrongdoing. Do you see how that's different? It is only because I felt distant that I made the mistake. It's because I didn't see God, because God hides God's self, that I made the mistake that I did. So then if the mistake arouses in me enough feeling of regret, sadness, sorriness, guilt, whatever you call it, then that very thing that was the problem becomes something to send me back to in my relationship to restore and even come closer. Because then I say like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I was so far from you. I didn't understand what our relationship was. That's how that happened. And then it turns it into a good thing. This teshuva is a teshuva that has to do with a mindset about reality, as opposed to just, I'm sorry, I made that mistake. Saying you're sorry, you made a mistake, apologizing, correcting it, having a plan so it doesn't happen again. Those are all the requirements in the human dimension that we are that are obligatory on us. That's what we are supposed to do. But if we don't see the bigger problem of what led to that, then we missed kind of the main idea. If we missed the main idea, then that's the real teshuva that we are trying to get back to. Is like we're trying to get back to a more perfect understanding that we can't really understand of how is it there can be nothing but God, but that I also exist. How can I truly understand that I'm connected to God? This connection is called love. I mean, that's what we talk about. Being loving somebody means to be attached to them. It's called devekus. It's the name of a band, but devek is glue in Hebrew. So something's dafka, somebody does something, but dafka means that they do something like they're sticking to their position and they're not changing. Dafka, that could be a good thing or a bad thing. But devekus means to connect together as one. This is from a place of love. This takes us to the month of Elul. So Elul is the only month that has where we use an acronym. So Elul is spelled Aleph Lamed Vav Lamed, Elul. And there are a number of different acronyms for it. And the acronyms are, the most famous one is Ani Ledodi Vidodi Li. I, Ani, am to my beloved, Lidodi, Vidodi, and my beloved, Li, is to me. And those are the letters, Ani Lidodi, Vidodi, Li, I am to my beloved is to me. There's another acronym, which comes from the Megillah. Rachel, could I just, I'm sorry, ask you if you wouldn't mind muting? I'm trying to find my mute button, but I can't find it. Thank you very much, I'm sorry. There's another one, Ish l're'ehu umatanot le'evyonim. This is from the Megillah of Esther, where we're given the command to, when we're given the command to send shalach manas, when we're supposed to give treats to one another. Because what is that? Anila dodi v'dodi li, I am to my beloved as my beloved is to me, is from the Song of Songs. And even though on the surface it looks like it's about lovers coming together, it's said to be really a writing about the Jewish people and God. I am to my beloved as my beloved is to me. We are connected. Ish l're'ehu umatanot le'evyonim. Each person to his friend, gifts and gifts to the poor. This is about our relationship between people. Both of those have our Elul acronyms, and they both talk about restoring and closing the gap, the distance in relationships, whether it's between us and God us and we and other people, or even between us and ourselves. Some of us are disconnected from ourselves. We have to get back on track with that. If we've actually have sinned against ourselves because there is this distance. Anila Dodi Vidodi Li. This is the month where we focus on this relationship. Now, this also relates to the whole thing that we were talking about, the month of Elul, when Moshe went up to Mount Sinai to get the final forgiveness for the sin of the golden calf and to come back with a second set of tablets. The relationship between God and the Jewish people was broken with the sin of the golden calf. That was like adultery only and with the God. If you start worshiping and dancing around an idol, that means you've broken trust with your relationship with God. This was the mending of that relationship. The mending of that relationship is considered to be the most powerful metaphor for the mending of all relationships. And the mending of all relationships is about restoring closeness. And how do we come back and how do we see ourselves as connected? So that's the meaning of this Teshuva. During the month of Elul, we have a metaphor, because our metaphors are always about the king. It says the king is not in his palace. The king is out in the field so that it's approachable and everybody can come. No appointments necessary, just come, and God is in the field. The king is in the field. This accessibility is a metaphor for God is close to you. It's an illusion. And in fact, the idea that God was in the palace is also an illusion. When the king is in the palace, you can't see him. You kind of think, okay, there's a big palace, so I guess he's in there somewhere, but I don't see him. That really becomes a metaphor for how we experience the world. It's like, okay, God might be here, but I don't see him anywhere. So when we say that that the king is in the field, that God is accessible and available, it means like God actually always was, but God had to cloak himself in the palace, had to cloak himself in nature, had to take a back seat, not because God doesn't care and not because God isn't there, but because God needs to create the space for us to exist as an independent person. But then we hope, as those of us who have grown children have found, or if you have a grown niece or nephew or whoever you have, and you notice that if there's a healthy relationship on all parts, on both sides, that very child as a 2-year-old who was kicking and screaming and saying, no, 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 and as an adolescent was like, you're not the boss of me, as an adult comes back and can have a real relationship with you, still as parent to child or as aunt to whoever, but it's coming from a place of maturity of I'm coming back in a relationship and now I can be close because I have developed myself as a person and now I can be in relationship. How did this person get to this place? Through making a lot of mistakes. The child, I remember even when, what our daughter Audrey, and again with Benjamin, when they got their driver's licenses, I was just like a nervous wreck. And the first time Audrey drove away from the house and she had Benjamin in the car, I'm like, this is a really bad idea. There are both of my children in the car being driven by one of my children who is my baby. So both my babies are in this car. This was horrifying to me. Unless I thought of the alternative was I drive them around for the rest of their lives. That was even more horrifying. So it is very hard to let go and to create this, give space for someone to develop and mature, but for them to be able to come back. So on Rosh Hashanah or on Yom Kippur, or during the month of Elul, is where we reset our sights and hopefully we are in a more mature place where we can say, that mistake I made, it's not, our goal in life is not to say, my goal in my life is to avoid making mistakes. Then I'll be a perfect person. And the answer is, no, you won't. You won't, you can't. And it is through the mistakes, because it's only through the mistakes and the uncomfortable feeling that we feel or the consequences we experience that give us the information, the input, the feedback that there's something wrong. And that something wrong is that we misunderstood what the nature is of our distance from God. And so we use it as a vehicle to come back in love. So that is what we're really aiming for. And it's so mind-boggling, we can't actually understand it. So the text that Rabbi Hutt used At the end of the text, it was very interesting in the Hebrew. This was from, it was called Nativot Olam, which means paths of the world. The very last line in the Hebrew was, Ve'elu hadvarim ein lefaresh otam le'omek shelahem. It's like, these things cannot be explained because they are really too deep. So we don't need to know exactly how it works because we can't, but we just need to know that it does work. So in this realm, then, we're going to call this the human realm, where we're doing the whole process of Teshuva, saying we're admitting what we did, confessing it, fixing it, making a plan not to repeat it. That's all our responsibility in this human dimension. In the divine dimension, those mistakes are considered, I'm going to say this word and it's hard to hear and hard to understand, is they were predetermined. They were predetermined. They were part of the package. That there have to be mistakes built into the system, because the mistakes are going to be the vehicle for recognizing the true relationship. If a person never made a mistake and never did anything wrong, they would never experience the distance. I'll give you an example. This wasn't a mistake. This was just like, again, the system. When Adam was created as one soul being, he didn't miss Eve. He never knew Eve. You don't know what you don't know. But God brought him, had to put into him an existential sense of loneliness, because God said it's not good to be alone. And then says, then God brought, and we can't really picture this exactly, and some of the midrashim around this are beyond the scope of what we would really want to think about. It says that God brought all the animals to Adam, not only to name them, but to see if he could have a relationship with them, the kind of relationship that would solve his existential loneliness of I'm by myself. And it says none of the animals worked, but God had to do that so that Adam could feel his hunger. And then he could create Chava, could create Eve, and then they could come together. So on one hand, so the metaphor is the same. God takes the one being and splits it. It's like, well, that was a bad idea. Why don't we just have one being? Why don't I just have me? And then that will be a lot easier. But no, God creates two beings that are kind of different from each other, and then says, come back together again. It's like, if you really want us together, then why'd you take us apart? It's like, because you can't have a relationship with oneness. You can only have a relationship with two. There has to be a separation. But then she's going to bug me, and she's going to do things I don't like, and he's going to leave his towels on the floor, and he's not going to help with the dishes, and nobody's taking out the garbage. It's like, it's so much easier just by myself. Like, yeah, but that's not the goal. The goal is to create that sense of oneness by joining back and bridging the gap. That is a Teshuva process also. In fact, you could say that almost every kind of relationship we have is a Teshuva process relationship, where there must be a separation and a coming together. And it has to be held in a very delicate balance. This is expressed in one of the Hebrew letters, the Hebrew letter of Chet. Now, let's see. Let me see if I can share the screen. I haven't done this in a long time. If I lose you, I'll come back, but let me see if I can do this. Share the screen. Whiteboard. Let's see if I can do that. There we go. No. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to draw here. Let's see if I can do that. Draw. Okay. A chet, the way you're used to seeing it. I'm drawing this with my right hand. I'm sorry, I'm left-handed, and so this is very not good. A chet looks like this. When you see a chet in the prayer book, it basically looks like that. But it does not look like that in the Torah, which is how we understand how our letters really look. So let me show you how it looks in the Torah, and you can understand maybe a little bit differently. So it starts off, it has, we're going to use a Vav and a Zayin. And then it has a little pointy thing that connects them. That's not really good, but you get the basic idea. It's two letters, a Vav and a Zayin, connected by a very thin point. So now I'm going to stop sharing. It says this letter, Chet, is the first letter of the Hebrew word chuppah. The chuppah, which is the marriage canopy, the Vav and the Zayin represent the man and the woman. The Vav is the man and the Zayin is the woman. It says, what is marriage? It says, marriage is where the Vav and the Zayin each retain their own independent reality and distinctiveness, but they are joined together with something that holds them close enough to create a new letter called Chet. That's the new couple. That is what every relationship is really like. And people talk about in a friendship, in a marriage, she wants me too much. She doesn't want me enough. I'm in her face. They're out of my life. They don't call me enough. Whatever it is, all these things are about what's the distance. She always makes me do what she wants to do. I want to do what I want to do. All of these things are basically this same conversation going on in every relationship we have, including God. God is always telling me what to do. I want to have some space. I need to do things my own way. Now, basically, we're like teenagers with God kind of all the time. I want to do it my way. He's not the boss of me. So this is what we're doing. The challenge is to get past those stages and to get to a mature relationship, which is a chuppah, which is why we have the metaphor for the month of Elul of marriage. Ani l'dodi, v'dodi li. I am to my beloved as my beloved is to me. And that relationship is one where it needs to exist, where I need to know that that little chutki thing is holding us together and I'm attached to God. And that's a good thing. It's not invading my space, but I have to be a mature person in order to really have that relationship. So God has wired us to push back, but it's in the end, it's to build us as people worthy of having a relationship with. Nobody really wants to have a relationship with somebody who's just caved into them. That's not really a relationship. Okay, fine, we'll do whatever you say. That's not really a relationship. So we have this at Bar and Bat Mitzvah. It says at the age of Bar and Bat Mitzvah, which becomes the age where a child becomes an adult, meaning not that they get the keys to the car, but they become responsible for their moral decisions, is the exact age, it says, where they get their full Yetzer Hara. I'm sorry, the Yetzer Tov and Yetzer Hara are in full operation. It says before that, and people said that when I taught Bar Bat Mitzvah students, people say, why do they have to have a Bar Bat Mitzvah when they're at the most difficult age? It's like just getting them to come to the Bar Mitzvah lesson is already a challenge. They don't want to do anything. They're arguing, all of this stuff. It says that's why we're celebrating the stage of life. It's when you get to the pushback stage that someone really has free choice. If they're just totally compliant, that's not really a relationship. I can't reward you if you're always just going along. So it's when you have a real decision to make where there is a pull away and a pull toward. All of those things have to be working in order for you to have a free choice and for you then to have reward. So it says when somebody reaches that stage, it says their reward increases. That's what we're celebrating at Bar Bat Mitzvah. We are celebrating that now their reward increases because their challenge is greater. Before they were like that, people say, oh, no, like my 10-year-old was also like whatever. I was whatever. The age of puberty, that age is where it's considered that spiritually that the person is now making real choices because they have real pulls in directions where they can really destroy their lives. So we know, especially in the realm of sexuality, you can have a teen pregnancy. The choices people make is not just about like bonking someone in the head on the playground with the ball. It could be, I got somebody pregnant, because I made a bad decision. So it's when we are in life and death places, the decisions really count. That is when the reward is greater. And that's what we're celebrating. People are like, why can't they just keep them as a kid? Or why don't you have the Bar Bat Mitzvah when they're 30 or something, when they've already grown up? It's like, that's the whole point, is for them to go through this process. So God is patient. And when we say the Ashamnu, Bagadnu, when we go through on Yom Kippur and confess our sins, At the end, we basically say, God, you made us this way. If you really wanted us just to be just perfectly behaved, you would have created us that way, but you didn't. You created us with our mistakes, with the potential to have those mistakes be the very thing that is going to be required and helpful in bringing me back into relationship with you. To that end, my mistakes now can become mitzvahs. Because the word mitzvah is related to the word sav, which means to connect. If I use my mistake as a vehicle to reconnect, then that turned it into a mitzvah, just as much as my lulav and etrog and my Shabbos candlesticks. My mistake actually becomes holy, and it was part of the plan. It was part of the plan that I have the mistakes so that I could experience that, the pain and the consequences and the suffering that comes from that, and come back. That's the bigger teshuva that we are talking about. This is so much more than making a list of all the things we did wrong. It's like, that's great. Make the list. We're supposed to do a cheshbon hanefesh, an accounting of our soul. We are supposed to fix the mistakes. But to miss the opportunity to fix the bigger thing, which is the mindset that led to the mistakes, that would be a shame. We have an entire month of Elul. In synagogues, the shofar is blowing every morning, starting Rosh Chodesh Elul, as a wake-up call. Come out to the field, God is here. In fact, God has always been there. You just thought he was in the palace. I had to tell you I was there. It's like the parent, again, who has to absent themselves in order to give the child free choice. I remember, they always talk about kids going crazy when they go off to college because the parents aren't there. And that's when you're going to find out what you really do. And people go crazy. Freshman year, the first few weeks, drinking, partying, whatever it is, mom and dad aren't around. And yet nobody ever suggested that mom and dad move into the dorm with the kids. And, and then everyone would be very well behaved. And then you would have ruined people. So yes, it introduces a tremendous risk. And we thank God, I thank God all the time that the mistakes I've made did not turn out worse, that they did not do things that ruined my life, because people can do that. Except as long as we are alive, we can always fix it, and we can use the repair as a repair in the relationship, but then to get to this other plane and understand that I am with God. What happens when I do that is something even more, is it changes my entire mindset. If I know that I'm attached to God and that I'm not alone, that makes me into a happier person. I don't have a sense of existential loneliness. I don't have a sense that it's me, myself, and that I have to have survival of the fittest. I'm attached to God. God is taking care of me. I am part of God's story. I am in God's reality. If we think about the mistakes we make, they come from places of arrogance, of greed, of fear, of anger. All of those things come from the feeling that I am not connected to the infinite creator of the universe. Once I feel that, then I know that I need to do my human effort, but I need to know that I'm being supported, just like the person who's in outer space is like, oh, I'm not floating out here in my space outfit. There's a tether. I'm actually tied to the mothership, and the mothership is providing me with oxygen, is providing me with everything I need. I don't need to compete with anybody. God is the infinite creator of the universe who has more than enough for everybody. I don't need to be greedy. I don't need to cheat on my taxes. I can be a happy, satisfied person because I am functioning in a place that allows me to understand that I am part of God's world. And I can not have to hide from my mistakes. I can say, oh, here's another opportunity to come close. What was I thinking? What was I thinking that led me to this error? And I can correct it, and I can be happy about it, and I don't have to hide from it. So this is what's coming to us for the month of Elul. There's so much to think about. There's so much to contemplate when we think about our lives, how we think about our lives, how we think about being in God's reality, how we think of our mistakes. changing from a place of being just embarrassed and wanting to not admit them to actually embracing them and realizing that God gave us those mistakes as a path back into the relationship. And with that change, it turns the whole thing into quite a happy occasion. It turns the whole thing into one of pleasure as opposed to shame, embarrassment, other than the shame, embarrassment being a trigger for me to return. That's the only purpose shame and embarrassment serves, and guilt. It's like, it's just a sign, like when you have a cut on your hand and you feel the pain, we're not supposed to be upset about it. We're supposed to go get a Band-Aid and fix it. So that's the only thing we need to do. So with this approach towards Teshuva and the broader Teshuva that we're really working at, we are trying to close the gap that God created when God created humanity, and recognize that the very thing that allows us to flourish and grow is the very thing that also can cause us the challenges. But when we turn it around, we can use it all for growth. We can use it to intensify relationship, and we can realize that God was there the whole time, in my mistake, with me, through my mistake, and is just waiting for me to use my mistake. I love that there's a beautiful writing that says, hold on, I'm going to read it to you. It says there was a discussion, this is a midrashic discussion. It says, it was asked, what is the punishment of the sinner? Wisdom, and I don't understand all the rest of this. Wisdom responded, the sinner will be pursued by misfortune. Prophecy said, the sinner will die. The Torah said, bring an offering to attain forgiveness. Finally, Hashem said, let the sinner return and be forgiven. It's like everyone thinks, people are like, oh, God is waiting to punish us and strike us with lightning and deprive us and curse us and do all these things. No, God's like, I just want you back. Just come back. I just want you back in my life. I just want you to see that I was here all the time. When we come to it from that place, then I can exist as an independent person who is completely connected to God. Then I can have a relationship like that chet. I have me, God is God, and yet it's all one. It's actually all one letter, and it is the ultimate paradox. But we experience a paradox in our own existence as well. The fact that I have an infinite soul that is connected to a physical body, that should blow your mind right there. How does that work? I have my body that was on the way to decay as soon as I was conceived. As soon as I was born, I'm already heading toward the grave. It's like, really? And then I have my infinite soul that's attached? How does that make any sense? So we have the same thing. We can live in the reality of just my body, or I can live in the reality of it's really all about my soul, and my body is a vehicle for my soul. It changes what I do. It changes the choices I make. It changes how I live. It changes whether I'm going to be choosing between good and evil, right and wrong, truth and falsehood, blessing and curse. When I'm heading in the place of, I'm setting before you, I present before you blessing and curse. You just get to decide what you're going to do. And it's not like I'm going to be perfect. It's not about that. It's going to be, what mindset do I understand? And we can say, I don't get it. I totally don't get it, but I know it's there. So we don't even get ourselves. We don't get anything. When we were lying, not me, but my grandchildren lying on the ground at Arches National Park at night, staring up at the stars, we don't even get that. I don't get that. I don't get the physical universe. How can there be millions of galaxies beyond our comprehension? I don't get it. But thankfully, we don't have to get it to appreciate it. I can just say, wow, that's so amazing. I feel so blessed. And the truth is people love that feeling of being overwhelmed by the reality of God's creation and by God. Nobody is sad when they go to the Grand Canyon and says like, oh, so upset. I'm so tiny compared to the Grand Canyon. It's like I'm a speck. It's like I'm nothing. Everyone's like, oh, that's so magnificent. That's so inspiring. That's so wonderful. I'll pay money to come and have this experience. Why? It's because we really know and know in our heart of hearts that we are connected to something bigger. But when we lose sight of that, then we think, I have to do things to make myself big. instead of like, I'm already big because I'm connected to the infinite creator of the universe. If I think I have to make myself big, then I'm going to pursue honor. I'm going to pursue as many possessions as possible. I'm going to fill myself with things to make myself feel big and important, instead of saying, well, I get that just really from God. So I can be there, and that's why it's very restorative. You go to the ocean, you see how huge the ocean is. Most people don't say, I really prefer standing in front of a puddle because compared to a puddle, I'm really big. Nobody likes that. People want to be like the vastness of the ocean, the vastness of the creation, the vastness of the universe, and that makes us happy. So this is tuning into that in an even deeper way, to saying the universe was created by God. It doesn't even begin to describe the infinity of God's reality. Infinity, now most people, when we say infinity, we always go big, but infinity is also infinitely small. So God's presence with us is also infinitely present with us at this moment. When I can have an awareness of that and maintain my individuality at the same time, then I can be in a Chet relationship. Then I can come to the chuppah with God. I can stand and get the Torah. I can be at Sinai. I can have forgiveness for my sins, and in fact, can be patted on my back for using my mistaken belief and that led to mistaken actions as a vehicle to drive me back into the relationship coming full force. That's the Teshuva that we're really talking about. And we need a good 40 days for this, because this, again, could like blow your mind in any way, shape, or form. So I wanted to share that with you. I so enjoyed learning about it. And as soon as I did, I'm like, I want to share this with you all. So thank you for sharing it with me. Any questions that people have, I'm happy to try to answer, try to respond to. So
Ellen,
feel free.
Ellen, I have a question. I'm so sorry, I didn't see the head that you showed, the Vav and Zayin. Can you show it once again, or it's too hard to do?
Let's see. I let me share the screen. Let's see if it's still there. I'm not sure. It may have gone away, but let's just
Okay.
hold on a second. One sec. Gabi, I think you're there. So this was a very poor chet, but this is how it's written in the Torah. It's a Vav and a Zayin with a very, very thin line that's pointed at the top that looks like a little hat that connects the two. When we see the chet in a Sidur or any other place where it's written with a flat top, but that is not how it looks. And just as a point of interest, you know that if a letter in the Torah is wrecked up, you can't read the Torah, you can't use it. And very often it is this little thing, this little part on the chet, because it's such a thin line. It's very, very thin. If it cracks off, then you can't use the Torah, because then the letters revert back to their Vav and Zayin, and they're not connected anymore. So you can't use it.
Wow. Thank you.
So that's the chuppah. So whenever I go to thank you, Lois. Whenever I go to a wedding now, regardless of how the chuppah looks, I always think like, I hope this relationship will be a true chuppah. I hope that there will be that each person retaining their strength and individual identity, but coming together to form a new letter that holds that in balance. It's not easy to do that. It's not easy to do that. And we're doing that with God as well.
That's beautiful. The whole lesson. Thank you so much. It's amazing.
My pleasure. Anybody else have any questions or thoughts or comments? Baruch Ti. Thank you, Gabi. All right.
I have, it's not related, but since you mentioned the word galaxies.
Yes.
I've wondered always why, and if I understand it right, that according to Judaism, we don't believe in life anywhere else besides here on Earth.
Yeah, we don't, I mean, we do not believe that there is, that God created this earth. I mean, which is also mind-boggling. It's like, oh my gosh, are you telling me that out of all of that infinite everything, we're the only one like this? We should be just like bowing down constantly in gratitude, appreciation, and awe that the earth.
Why us and why the earth? I mean, we don't know.
Because God wanted to have a relationship with us. God created the world created us to be in relationship with us.
He picked
And
this planet, just this
this planet,
with an infinite number of planets and galaxies and everything. He picked this.
he
That's what
created
we
this.
believe.
He created this to have this relationship with us. Yeah. And in fact, there's a beautiful, I think it's, I don't know if it's the Midrash or if it's in the Gemara, I'm not sure where it is. It says that God created the stars for us to see that so that we wouldn't be lonely and scared at night. Because at night people get scared because it's dark. But when people have stars to look at, it's comforting. So, and also it helped us find our way around the planet, though. I hardly can do it with GPS, with Waze. So I still am mind boggling that sailors and explorers use the stars to get up. I don't even know where I don't even want to think about where I would have ended up if I was using the stars to get around.
It's a Jewish woman thing. We don't have a good sense of direction in general.
Spiritual direction we have, maybe not in the physical world. But spiritual direction we do. We have it. We're like zeroed in on that. So so yes, we're here. And even within our own solar system, you know, if you read Rabbi Avigdor Miller, I'll tell you another story. But other people have written that if just within our own solar system, never mind anything else, if we were just a little bit closer to the sun or a little bit farther away from the sun, we couldn't exist. And if our atmosphere wasn't exactly what it is, we couldn't exist. It's not only amongst the infinite that's out there, the exactitude of what Earth represent for our habitat is beyond comprehension. It is flabbergasting. It is unbelievable. And that we just totally take it for granted. So that's one thing. The other thing is many rabbis, many of our sages were are students of the natural world. People think like, oh, Jews don't believe in studying other things. Like, yes, we do. The natural world, we are meant to explore and understand and appreciate. So there was a story, and I'm trying to remember who told us the story. It said there was a rabbi, he was out walking with his students at night, and he looked up in the sky, and he was looking up at the stars, and he was known to be very knowledgeable about astronomy, and he stopped, and the students were like, what's wrong? He said, there's a star missing. Like, there's a star missing? Like, yeah. So they called NASA, and they said, yeah, we noticed, we can't figure out what happened.
Wow.
Can you imagine that level of, okay. Okay,
No.
so Rachel Mashari is arguing that it's a Jewish thing to not have a good sense of direction. I think that's probably true. It's not, I think that's true.
It is true. It's a Jewish woman, not
no,
men.
it isn't. It really isn't. My sister has the best sense of direction ever. When we went to Israel, the very first time, she was 14, we landed at the airport and she knew where we were immediately. We were in a foreign country. I'm like, how do you know where we are? She said, well, I can just feel it. I can tell. So yeah.
Anyway, Rachel, maybe it's a cultural this generation Jewish women in Denver. I think we were pretending that we don't know anything.
Name Tova Kava. Now, I personally do not have a good sense of direction, but that's just me. I mean, it's become almost like not a joke. It's actually very worrisome. Some of my nightmares are about getting lost. Literally, when we stay at a hotel, Steve takes my arm when we walk out the door, because I can't remember whether it's left or right to the and when we go to Israel, I remember some of my friends saying, you're leading a tour to Israel, like, where are you gonna end up? So I mean, like, well, I'm doing the spiritual part and the tour guide takes us to the physical places, because that's not my thing. Even that's like, I've always wanted to stay at the same hotel because I know where the restaurant is, like I can find the dining room. So I'm getting better, but it's a handicap. It really is. So yeah, God has distributed talents amongst all peoples in different ways. So Yeah. Okay. So yes, so we have this sense of a sense of wonder that is just so amazing that we appreciate and that should make us feel happy and surrounded by love. That's like, wow, you gave me this bubble of our universe to live in. And we also don't know the impact of all of the other planets and galaxies and everything else that they're affecting things in some way that we don't know, of either whatever the chemicals, the atmosphere, who knows? We don't know. So given that we don't even understand the physical world, I'm not sure what makes us think that we are at the pay grade to understand all of creation or the infinite creator of the universe. It's a little chutzpahdik, honestly. And basically all we can say is it's beyond me, but I certainly appreciate it. I say that about a lot of things. I say this about the computer. It's beyond me. I don't understand it. The first time my son-in-law teases me because the first time I saw a laptop, I was like, where's the computer? Like part of it, because I have a desktop and there's like this whole big thing. So how did that turn into this little thin thing? So I still don't get it, but I'm happy to use it and I'm grateful for it. So God willing, as we enter and we announce the new month of Elul, and we get ready for this process, that we will come to it with an incredible sense of joyful exploration of how we can use whatever shortcomings we have, whatever mistakes we have made, to help us find our way back to a true reality, which is that we always were connected, we always are connected, we were never disconnected, and all of it is a necessary illusion. The word for world is olam, and it's related to the word elam, which means hidden. It says the world both reveals and hides God's reality, and it has to be that way in order for us to function as growing spiritual beings capable of being in relationship with that infinite creator of the universe. Have a magnificent, wonderful Shabbos. Enjoy a Rosh Chodesh, and I will look forward to seeing you next week. And Mazel Tov to, and let's see, Marsha, are you still on? Yes, Marsha, Mazel Tov on your new baby, Asher. We're so happy for you. Right.
Thank you so much.
That's
You should have lots of
wonderful.
nachas from him.
Beautiful.
Really beautiful.
Wow. Where do they live?
Wonderful.
They live far away?
They live
San
in San
Francisco.
Francisco.
Okay. So you're in San Francisco now?
She
Yes.
is.
Wow. So
We've got San Francisco, we've got Baltimore, we've got Denver, we've got all sorts of places.
that's amazing.
All
Mazal
right.
tov, gadol, gadol. That's
Ladies.
wonderful news.
Ladies, regardless of what our physical sense of direction is, one thing is true, is that Jewish women were gifted with an incredibly keen sense of spiritual direction. It gets a little muddied sometimes, and we make missteps and we get a little sidetracked and whatever. There are a lot of pressures, there are a lot of distractions, there are a lot of other things that get in our way, but know that the factory model of you came equipped with an incredible sense of spiritual direction. That was from the very beginning that God built us that way, and we just need to tap into it and clear away the clutter so that we can reconnect to it. And then we will be on our way to being the leaders of the Jewish people that we were meant to be. All right,
Amen.
ladies, have a wonderful Shabbos, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah. Ellen, I wanted to tell you that for me, all my family listens to my sense of direction, not because it's good, because it's opposite. If I say right, they go left.
Oh, I hear you. I really struggle. It's not even funny.
Yeah,
So
that's
Thank
why
you.
my kids used to tease me when I drove carpool for Herzl. We picked up Emily Hyatt and who else? Somebody else who lived in Crestmore Park area. I wasn't exactly sure how to get to their house like almost every day. I had to draw myself a little map and I had to go that way. So even on the days, if let's say Emily wasn't coming to school, if she was sick or something, I still went past her house like an RTD bus. And Audrey would say, she's not coming to school. You can just go this way. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I need to go this way because this is the only way I know how to get there. And it's really not very good.
But,
And I had, do
but
you
it's
remember
not
the
only
old
you.
Celebrity Sports Center? I don't know if who was in town then.
Remember, of course.
The old Celebrity Sports Center. Okay, so I live at 8th and Monaco. Celebrity Sports Center was on Colorado Boulevard. Audrey was invited to a party there. I drove down Monaco, and I think I drove down to, I don't know, I want to say like Evans or something, and then turned right, and then to go to Colorado Boulevard. It was like near like Cherry Creek. She was like,
Right.
why are you going now? I'm like, I don't know where. I took swimming lessons as a kid at Celebrity Sports Center. It's like, I've been traveling up and down Colorado Boulevard my entire life. It's like, I don't know where it is. So I can tell you, having Waze and having all these things have been a
Right?
real
It changed our
savior for-
lives.
really savior for me.
For me too.
I just can't hold it in my head. But I know the Parsha, and I know that God's plan has us for aiming for redemption. And I know that's where we're going. So I don't know how to physically get there, but I know how to spiritually get there.
Yes.
So
And
thanks
then-
for joining me for that part.
Well, thank you for inspiring
Just don't
us.
go on a hike with me without somebody else that's a professional.
And don't feel bad because we share, many of us share the same problem. I know how to get to my new daughter's place, but going back, it doesn't compute. And at night, the Google wasn't working, and it was dark, and I just went one time before, so I wasn't learning it yet. I was in trouble.
It's very scary. I went to somebody's house once, and they told me how to get there, and then they say, "Oh, just retrace your steps." I'm like, that doesn't help me. It is a totally new thing. I ended up out like, I don't even know where I was. It was also dark. I didn't know where I was. It was very scary.
It is.
At least you live in Denver where it's a little bit easier because the mountains on the days when we can actually see them are to
Yes.
the west. They're to the
Yes,
west. So that
Though at
never
night,
changes. That doesn't change.
I can tell you at night, the
Oh,
mountains don't help at all. So, yeah, I have to
Yeah.
take precautions. I have to know this is an area of weakness for me, and I have to make plans. Steve will
Yeah.
always ask me, do you know how to get there? And I'm like, well, let me just review. And it could be someplace I've been
Yeah.
before. It doesn't matter. Just doesn't
Yep.
stay in my head.
So
It's
you're
a
not alone.
luxury.
We're with you
thank
with
God
the same
for
problem.
Steve Hutt.
Yeah.
Thank God for Steve Hutt and Waze and Google Maps. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very
Thank
good at
God.
reading maps though, but you can't drive and read a map at the same time. So you have to
No.
have, I've noticed that.
Yep.
So,
But don't feel lonely. We're with you. Same
okay,
problem.
thank you. Thank you for sharing
Most of
my,
us are, yeah. Some of us have to work
Okay.
harder than others at it.
yes, Helene.
Hi, Sunday at your house?
No, at the Jewish Experience. I'm sorry, the Jewish Experience, yes.
Where is that?
399 South Monaco.
Where-
Monaco and
What's
Monaco and
going on?
Dakota. Monaco and Dakota.
And we
Monaco.
all know how to get there. Woohoo!
I know how to get there. That really helps me. Just down my street and turn right.
399 Monaco, is that the address?
I think so. 399 South
South.
Monaco.
South Monaco.
South Monaco.
Oh, okay.
What are you doing there?
We're having a get together of the women for our Israel trip.
Oh, that's so nice. When are you leaving?
God willing, October 17th.
Really?
You're right. Like
We'll be
we don't know
praying. We'll
what
be praying every day that we're going.
We
I
pray.
know. We know.
We
Who
do our
knows?
work and we leave the rest in Hashem's hands. So we do
I'll
what
pray
we
for
can
you
do.
guys that you can go. I
We
pray for you
go,
girls.
our
you can go.
motto is we make preparations and not predictions, right? That's from
Yeah.
my book. I read my book. Make
We plan in
preparations,
future is
not
unknown.
predictions.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good
I'll
one. I
pray
like
for you.
that.
I'll pray for you. Lots
Thank
of
you.
love.
We'll
Thank you.
see.
You. It
Okay,
was so
everyone,
nice
it's
to-
lovely to see you. Have a wonderful Shabbos and a very good Rosh Chodesh, and I look forward to seeing you next Thursday.
Amen.
Shabbos.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Yasher Koach was one amazing.
Baruch T, thank you.